Bourbon is another one of those things. I cannot think of a certain time where I've had bourbon at any given moment and my mind hasn't been transformed to another point in time as a point of reference. I don't do that with vodka. I don't do that with, seltzers, but I don't even remember my first seltzer. But bourbon, there is always a significance, whether it is a location or time in memory. And that is one of the most powerful psychological addicting things that I think keeps us going back to that well to a certain extent.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Bourbon Pursuit, the official podcast of bourbon. Just Kenny here today, riding solo, but we're talking about a subject that is kind of like it's good and bad, right? We're going to talk about health and bourbon, which is something that you probably have seen. I would say the new generation combined saying like, I'm not drinking near as much, but then us older millennials are saying, maybe you just don't have kids yet, and maybe that's part of the problem. But there is something to be said about how alcohol and your health really kind of combine. And this is something that I know Fred had wanted to talk about. He wanted to talk about for a very long time. And now that we have an expert on the show, he's not here. So he doesn't get to chime in with this, but we're going to have a great conversation talking about how alcohol, basically how it's adapting to your physical and physiological self and how you can go ahead and make sure that you're drinking healthily and being able to use it responsibly too. But there's going to be a whole lot of things that I'm not going to be able to explain today because he's going to say a whole lot of long words that I'm not going to be able to comprehend either. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Dr. Ulysses Wu. He is the System Director of Infectious Diseases and the Chief Epidemiologist, did I say that right? Epidemiologist at Hartford HealthCare. So Dr. Wu, welcome to the show.
Call me Ulysses or Yuli, that's fine, but thank you for having me.
I like Yuli. Okay. I'm going to use Yuli.
I'll go with that. I like that.
Did your parents give you that name Yuli, or how'd you come by Yuli?
No, it's people couldn't pronounce Ulysses.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're the first Ulysses that I've ever met, other than obviously learning through history of a past president. That was the only other Ulysses that I kind of knew about.
Yeah, it's definitely, there are a few football players that were named Ulysses. I may be named after the Greek guy, the hero, but that's a lot to live up to. Well, I guess being a president in general is hard to live up to. So.
Yeah, the bar was set pretty high with that.
Exactly.
As well. So to kind of set the stage here and kind of talk about, why are you so credible other than the title that I just had mentioned off, kind of talk about your background in getting into healthcare and sort of like your role and how you grew into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up, I'm a Jersey guy. So Jersey Shore, everything you see about that, it's all true.
It's all true.
It's all true. I was not part of that, but I went to a school in Pittsburgh called Carnegie Mellon, where the Monongahela is, and they have some great ryes out there.
I've heard of both of those things, yeah. I actually had a cousin that went to Carnegie. She was in the robotics program.
Yes. Stellar. So yeah, we're all geeked out there, but I was actually a corporate finance and economics major, and so I spent some time doing I would say corporate finance for large cap companies. We did some mergers and acquisitions for financing, and I decided, it was great stuff, but there has to be more. And so that's when I decided to go into medicine. And so I ended up going into medicine in Philadelphia, which is, by the way, one of my favorite towns in the world. So
Philly represent, huh?
I can't recreate a cheesesteak anywhere. It is delicious.
I love my cheesesteaks. I need to go and visit for that reason alone. I have been to Philadelphia a few times, but it's always been for work and getting in and out. And I never really had a chance to go and do a really like local kind of cheesesteak. It's always like, we're going to take you out to fancy dinners. And I don't think that's the place to get a good cheesesteak.
I'll leave you a list right after.
All right, perfect.
For sure. But I spent most of my time in the Mid-Atlantic. And so I moved all around the country for my training, did my residency, my medical school in Philadelphia, my training in Delaware. I did a fellowship and a chief residency in Chicago. And then I moved down to Louisiana to do a second fellowship, and I ended up being faculty at LSU for quite some time. So if my drawl comes out, it's funny, coming down to Louisville, my drawl started coming back out again. And so because I just love it, I started calling everybody sir and ma'am again. And I was just, it's kind of brought back what I was doing a long time ago. But
there's not as many Cajuns around here, though. So, yeah.
That's true. Well, I see there's some Cajun restaurants. I've had a great time here in Louisville, by the way. So, and then moved up back north. And so how did I get into this? Well, I'm an infectious disease doctor by training. And so what does that encompass? It encompasses a lot of different things, obviously infections, but stopping infections, vaccinations, all of these things. COVID was the big thing for the past few years. So I was a little bit busy for the past few years.
I was about to say, that probably kept you heads down for a while.
Exactly.
It might have made you start drinking more.
If anything, it gave me allocation more. So I was happy about that. But in reality, it's we are all epidemiologists and do public health to a certain extent. And so public health was something that I decided that I really want to start branching out into. And I've always had this love for whiskey, actually anything alcoholic, to be honest. I don't drink all that much, but and I wanted to intersect how alcohol and your health and longevity, how we're impacted from that certain standpoint. And so I started looking into it, and as I said, I continued that journey along with my whiskey journey, and now the two are kind of meeting in this this Burning Man type situation
Nice.
that I'm in right now. So,
how long ago did you start researching alcohol effects and everything like that?
So basically, probably when I first started, when I first touched bourbon, I was curious, because it's different. I grew up in the vodka era, and shame on me for growing up in that era. But
it's okay. we won't hold it against you yet. You found the dark side.
Literally the dark side. That's right. I have a saying: if it's brown, drink it down. So either
Nice.
way. But and then I went into the craft beer phase, and then I'm just like, maybe I want to be a little more sophisticated about this. And so I started looking into bourbon and why is it different? How was it aged? How is it produced? And the congeners that it's very different. And I've heard it a million times on your show. You're producing a product that is not going to be released for 2 to 4 to 12 to 15 years. That's so different from everything else that I drank. And I wanted to see that impact why it was different and how it was different, not necessarily whiskey itself for the body, but how alcohol was in general. And so my job, I usually take care of only sick people in the hospitals. I don't see a lot of people outside of the hospital. So inside the hospital, I'm seeing kind of the end product of what I don't want to say what our society has become or what America has become, but we have access. Everything tastes better. Everything's more accessible. We have access to all these things. And I don't know if psychologically we've been able to catch up with our firewalls to be able to stop ourselves from binging or excessing and all of these. And then so I wanted to look at its impact on health. And so it's not just alcohol, but it's also nutrition and calories and eating as well. Those are my interests.
And when you say firewall, as in like the human ability to stop ourselves and say, I've either consumed too much or trying to find like, where's my limit?
Yes, that's exactly, and it's a great question because with these firewalls, human evolution, if you believe in evolution, it happens on a macro level. So it happens over generations, right? That's how these firewalls kick in. I have no doubt 100 years from now, my great-great-great-grandchildren are going to be much more adaptable to, whatever excess they are. But on a daily level, like I see, I get a sniff of the burgers and I'm like, want burger now, My firewall is not up. Yeah, exactly. I mean, just walking down here on the row, it's like I just see all these beautiful bourbons and whiskeys, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And so internally, I have to keep setting up these firewalls internally just to make sure that we don't get to excess.
My problem with my firewall is that we'll go out to eat, and my wife and my child and me will all order something, but they only eat half their food. And I grew up in a household. It's just like, no, you eat everything. So I eat everything that's also on their plates. And so that's my firewall that I have yet to be able to get past.
Oh, you will get there for sure. But no, I'm the same way. We did not waste food, and so I'll just say, all right, you're not going to eat that. I'll either refrigerate it or I'll just eat it like some other time. So,
well, kind of talk a little bit about your bourbon journey too, and how these started intersecting. How did you said in the 90s, you were kind of there in the vodka craze, and you said you wanted to try something different. Do you remember that first bottle or whatever it was that kind of got you into this and hooked you in?
Oh, do I have to talk about my first bottle?
I mean, I can always talk about my first serving job at a restaurant that wasn't the highest class, but if you want to put it out for the world, we can kind of set it.
I'm going to be like a tater. It was Blanton's.
Oh, well, actually, that's not that bad. I mean, I always figured it'd be Maker's Mark or something. But, I mean, if you get your hands on Blanton's, most people are being like, that's today's unicorn. But I was actually reading part of your bios that you were buying a whole lot of stuff way back in the day, yes. And you had no idea the value of what you were procuring.
Absolutely. So Blanton's, I bought it because it was a recommendation. And back then when I was buying it was $40. $40 Blanton's. I mean, it was delicious. My first venture, it's not too high proofed. So I thought it was actually very good. I didn't chase the horse. I didn't even really recognize that there was a horse on the bottle. So that's not my sort of thing. But after that, I started looking into doing some research. And this was kind of before the internet was very formative. Like you couldn't really figure these things out. So I would just go down to the store and I'd see, 10-year rip, 12-year rip on the shelf. I'm like, oh, that's a cool label. How much is that? $30. I'm like, oh, great.
I'll give it a shot.
I liked it. It wasn't great, but it was okay. And then, so this is all the Stitzel-Weller stuff. This is not the current stuff. And so it was good. And then I saw the 12 and then the 15. The 15 was delicious. And then I bought like a case of the 20 and it was like $80 a piece.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Wow.
And so I was just buying it and I was drinking it. I mean, I don't drink a lot, but I was, over time I started drinking it. And there's one that's actually gone defunct, Black Maple
Hill.
Yeah. So the old bottle, again.
The cognac style bottle.
Yes. I had the red, the black, the green labels. I had all of that. Drank it all.
At least you enjoyed it, I guess, maybe.
I was at a store yesterday and I'm like, oh, that's a $2,000 bottle. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Hindsight, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I was starting to enjoy it. And I think what drew me to it is what draws a lot of people to it. Like vodka it's weird buying vodka. You want to buy an alcohol that tastes like nothing. Like you want it to be as neutral as possible. But with whiskey, and I'm a Scotch drinker and I'm a rum drinker as well, the variety of flavors that you can tease out from each of these things. And that's my bourbon question to you guys. Hopefully you'll answer it sometime in my life. But
hit me with
how do you get these flavors? And I have this belief of the 10 things that really define what the flavor of whiskey is. If you take out the label, if you're completely blinded, you don't know where it was distilled, you take the label away and you take the age away. And just bourbons only, what are the defining characteristics? And actually, your guy, Alex, yesterday, he was so nice to me.
Good.
He blinded. So I did your tasting. I said, blind me. I don't want to know. So he put the 6 out. I had them. They were gorgeous. They were delicious. I only got 2 out of the 6 right.
Oh, there we go. It's the humbling part of what it's like to be a whiskey nerd and thinking like, oh, I can pick this out. That's a blind lineup. I do this all the time. And then even as somebody as myself, I don't even do the I used to do it where I would tell my wife to go downstairs and be like, hey, grab 6 bottles off the shelf or grab 4 and pour them and I'll see if I can guess them. And not even just like put the 4. She could sometimes put the 4 out and I would probably get 2 out of the 4 right.
Right.
So it's definitely a very tricky thing in this industry to be able to pinpoint exactly, even sometimes between bourbons and rye, I still get them wrong.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, and I think that happened to me yesterday, actually. Yeah. And even your cognac cask finish, I didn't even get right. So, but I don't drink a lot of cognac, to be honest with you. But anyway, so the answer, I'm sorry, I'm long-winded about these things, but when I started getting into alcohol nutrition was in my IPA phase. IPA is delicious. But doubles and triples, we're talking 400 to 700 calories. And if you're drinking 4 of them...
For a single beer?
For a single 6, they're 16 ounce. And so that's the other thing. Everything's being supersized. And so they probably start at about 200, 300. But if you get a nice, 10 to 12 ABV IPA, we're talking 500, 600 calories. And if you drink 4 of them, all of a sudden, that's your caloric intake for the day.
Oh, my God. I didn't really put that together. I actually went and had some beers this past week and got some Belgian triples and a quad. And obviously, they were about 10% each. Yeah. And I'm like, well, I'll get the most bang for my buck. I'll go ahead and get this for $9 instead of getting the 5% for $7. It's like, that seems like a better. Plus, I love the Belgian quads and triples, but that's sort of maybe like the mentality of the supersize me. Do you want fries with that? Do you want a Coke with that? And you're just like, well, it's only another $1, so I might as well.
Exactly. And by the way, West Fullerton is my favorite. I just absolutely love them. So I guess you can only get it from the monks in Belgium or whatever. But no, and that's part of the problem. Nobody's drinking the 80 proof stuff anymore. And so one of the things that I would love to say is that with each ABV that you're going up, there is a correlation between ABV and calories. And so if we're drinking hazmat, that's, greater than 140 proof, we're already talking 75% more ABV. There's a caloric component to it. And so kind of tying it into nutrition, the problem with that is a lot of these studies, and I'm going to talk about how bad, I'm not going to talk about individual studies, but how it's difficult to interpret these studies. They were based off of standard sizes. Your 12-ounce Budweiser, right? Your 1.5 ounces of 80 proof whatever. Not a lot of people are still drinking that, but
and
the
that
geeks
used to
are
be,
not.
that was like 100 calories was 1 ounce of 80 proof whiskey, right? So I know you probably don't know off the top of your head, but if you were to say you are drinking let's say you're drinking 125 proof on the regular, because we know a lot of people out here that listen, they're like, give me barrel proof. That's all I want.
Right.
What sort of impact does you say, like, because I'm assuming a lot of us still go, well, it's still 100 calories. It's just whiskey.
Yeah.
Is it now 120? Or you think it's around 150? You think it's even higher than that?
I think it's probably around the 150. You're right. I don't know the answer, but one of the themes that I would like to keep on par for today is everything in moderation to a certain extent. So it's not that 150 you're having that one time or the 4 that you're having, so the 600 calories you may be having. It is the 600 every day, cumulative, because what we're going to see with some of these alcohol studies is that the cumulative effect is really what's going to get us.
Okay, so it's all about moderation then. Okay, so at least I'm not eating maybe a bowl of ice cream a day, but I can go between bowl of ice cream, 4 glasses of whiskey, and then the next day bowl of ice cream, the next day 4 glasses of whiskey. So we'll kind of balance it like that.
Yes.
All right, so I can keep at least my sweet tooth going. That's for sure.
Oh yeah.
So one of the things, and you sent me an amazing document, and anybody that's interested, I will probably put this on our show notes and everything like that. So if you want to kind of see exactly a lot of the things that we talked about in this particular episode, you provided a lot of the information, but we're going to dive into some of it. One of the first things you talked about is, like how difficult this is to study, and kind of talk about the reason why.
So it's difficult to study because nobody's funding it. A lot of studies, they require a lot of funding, but a lot of these they're not huge longitudinal studies. So what do I mean by that? They're not looking at people over time. Most of them are short-term studies, and then they're observational. So they look at a set of data over time, and they're like, oh, this is our conclusion. And when it comes to studies, it's just incredibly faulty. And so there's actually, as far as I know, been really 2 good long-term studies. And the problem with these long-term studies is over time there's attrition. And so people change their habits over time. And we have such a heterogeneous population as well. And so here's a good example, right? You remember the whole wine craze, like wine was great for you. And like, the French paradox, why are the French so healthy even though they're eating saturated fats all the time? And the problem with that is that the people that they were studying, it was a very different demographic, right? Their education was different. Their income was different. And a lot of that's not attributable to the rest of the population. And so because of that—
And that's because of public education, public health access, everything like that, or is it?
Public education, health access, but just your demographic, just what everybody's used to being raised in and what they're doing. It's just the population is just so heterogeneous. So to take an observational study, which is already faulty in the beginning, and then to generalize it to the general public is just, it's faulty. And it's easy to draw conclusions that are often wrong.
Okay. And a lot of that, I don't know, you can probably tell me a little bit better, but obviously growing up in Europe versus growing up in the US, it's much different on how parents treat alcohol and how it's introduced to children at a younger age, right?
Yeah.
I would assume even in France, you're at 15, you're probably getting your first glass of wine, maybe even younger than that.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of that is certainly cultural. And when you look at it, it's from a puritanical society standpoint. That's kind of how what came over on the Mayflower. So there's a lot of this is underneath the carpet, behind the scenes. I'm in New England. We have a stiff upper lip sometimes up there. But we're all very friendly, but we're not as friendly as you guys down here. But the reality is, if you hide some of these things or you withhold this information, they're going to get their information out there, whether it's the interweb or whether it's their friends. And I'm not sure they should be getting, whatever the sex talk, the alcohol talk, the drug talk from their friends, because their friends, they're not knowledgeable either as well. Yeah. So it is always best to try to, I don't want to say introduce people to these concepts. Like, I'm not going to sit down my kids and actually, my older one, he's 22. He just had his first taste of whiskey the other day. And so that was his first taste. But he's always known. And
you're like, wow, finally we can hang out again.
He was like, this is terrible.
Yeah. Don't worry. It'll get you. You'll see the fun side of things.
Well, that's how I know he'll never touch the stuff in the cellar. So
yeah, there you go.
Which is great.
Do you have any of those old bottles
I do.
You do? You got a few of them? Oh, that's going to be fun to talk about.
They're in storage. Some of them are in storage because I can't keep them in the house. But
yeah, I mean, I'm sure you looked at it and you were just like, well, I can't touch these ones ever again.
The A.H. Hirsch 16.
Yeah. The gold foil.
Yeah, I have 2 bottles. One's open, and the other it's in storage somewhere. So I'll never open that.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Waiting for the right time.
Yeah.
Either to open it or sell it. It's always one of those things that people are always like, you should buy everything to open. I was like, yeah, if you've been sitting on it for that long, it's like sitting on a stock from, I don't know, we'll say Apple from the 90s,
exactly.
Right? It's just like, well, at this point, might as well keep hanging on to it until I really need to.
You found out what your grandparents gave you for Christmas, and it was Apple stock, and it was just sitting there. And mind you, I've never sold a bottle in my life. I didn't get into this because of collecting. It was more like I would have all these Stitzel-Wellers, and I just never got around to drinking them. And the Hirsch, I never got around to drinking them. And so all of a sudden, I was talking to distributors like, what? You have Stitzel-Weller 15? I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh my goodness. I'll buy that. It's like, no.
You're going to have your own museum after this.
No, I wish. No Justin's here.
So is the reason that, like any long-term trials, doesn't exist because of funding? I find it really odd because, alcohol has been ingrained into society since, BC. Like it was talked about even in the Roman days where people were drinking alcohol and mead and everything like that. Yet there's no long-term study to kind of track over, say, 50 or 75 years of what it can do to somebody?
It's a great point. And it's really doesn't come down to funding. It's multifactorial. That's what we like to say. There's a lot of different reasons why it happens. I mean, number one is the length of the study alone, like to do something like that. Funding does factor in because there's no wealth to be gained by studying this. We see with public health now, there's a lot of closure of public health departments and things like that. So they're not able to study it. There's people power that factors in. But to me, the reality is that it's a wonderful thing that we're not sure we want to look under the carpet, right? That's why we don't want to look at it.
I'm sure the U.S. spirits wholesalers and the wine wholesalers of America are like, you know what? Let's just have people keep drinking. We don't want to see exactly what's going to happen here. We don't need another tobacco revolution.
Well, and there's a movie called Thank You for Smoking. I don't know if it's this faux documentary satire about the smoking industry and the tobacco lobbyists. But I don't want to give away the ending, but of what I want to talk about. But in reality, I think there is a way to look at it for the alcohol industry, actually how to make this a sustainable model. I just listened to your amazing, actually, I don't, because I'm listening to all your podcasts in reverse, so I don't know where it was, but it was about the sustainability of oak.
Yes.
That episode. And because in the beginning, we were just cutting trees down. Nobody cared, right?
Yeah, like there's more. They'll keep regrowing, right?
Right, exactly. And so the expert on, she was amazing, but she talked about where we are with sustainability. And I think with alcohol and with bourbon, there is a sustainability in terms of how do we look at this in the long term?
Yeah, and that's just more than oak, right? I mean, there's a lot more things that just come into
of course.
That. Absolutely. So I want to kind of talk about more about the drinking and some of the stats to kind of talk about what you found in regards of like how much people like how much are people drinking across the United States, and the percentages, whether it's men or women, light versus binge drinking, everything like that too.
Right. So definitions, I think, are very important because everybody's definition of what's heavy, what's binge is going to be very different. And again, I'm going to base this off of old studies or old recommendations where it was the 12-ounce Budweiser, right? Because it's different now. Our ABVs are different. We have 16-ounce IPAs. We have hazmat bourbon. So everything's a little bit different. But
it's funny you say that. You go to any sporting event, whether it's the Patriots or even like the local soccer team here, the only beers you can get come in 24-ounce cans.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, they're the big daddies, right? So it's like, yeah, more bang for your buck, but it's the whole super size me movement.
Well, see, it's gotten to the point for me that, and I'll add a little personal into this, like, I'd rather just have water or an unsweetened iced tea at that point because the 24 ounces of beer that I'm going to have, I'd rather allocate that for my antelope burger that I had or my kangaroo burger that I had last night. Or for you, the ice cream, it's like, take that beer. It's delicious. It's awesome. You're at a game, but I'm going to allocate those calories. So it's actually becomes a calorie allocation game. If anybody's interested in this, most people are not going to be interested in allocating.
After this,
calories.
Somebody's going to start downloading. I'm sure they make plenty of apps, but everybody's gonna be downloading the calorie counter tracker apps on their phone to be able to figure out, like, okay, what am I actually consuming at the end of the day? Because if not, it looks like I'm eating asparagus and ham sandwiches for a while.
Believe it or not, I love doing the weight loss stuff on the side for some people, and the calorie counters is one of the best tools that you can have.
Oh, easy.
But the problem is people lie to their calorie counter.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, like, no, it wasn't asparagus, it was Chex Mix, but I get it. Yeah.
Exactly. Or the handful of Skittles.
Yeah.
I'm not going to input that, either way. But so the definitions are kind of important. So I'll just run through that. So we have binge drinking and we have heavy drinking. Binge drinking, we have to break it out by sex because sex and gender, the way that alcohol is even metabolized is very different. So it's going to impact us very different. And the weight is going to matter. So a 250-pound man is going to be very different from a 150-pound man. But for binge drinking, it is considered, for women, it's considered greater than 3 in any one occasion. And now all of your listeners are going to be like, that's a pretty regular occurrence. Like, I've certainly done that myself, but it really comes down to the regularity of how you're doing it. And so that's why we talk about heavy drinking. So women, the same thing is if consistently you're drinking greater than 7 in a week. So 3 and 7 are the numbers to remember. For men, for binge drinking, it's 4. Now remember, it's 4 12-ounce Budweisers or 4 1.5-ounce 80-proof shots, right?
That's in a week?
No, that's in one occasion. That's for binge. Yes.
Oh, okay. I was getting scared.
No.
I was getting scared. I was like, well, I'm way past binge at this point.
That's actually why I'm here. This is an intervention. No.
Yeah, there we go.
But so I'm sorry. For binge drinking, yes, women greater than 3 or greater, greater than 3 in occasion, and greater than 4 or equal in occasion for men. Now, heavy drinking is defined kind of by week. So for women, it's greater than 7 in a week or greater than 14 drinks in a week. And again, standard sizes. Heavy drinking, there are some no-nos. So for excessive drinking, so people with an alcoholic problem who used to have an alcoholic problem, that is considered, any drink is considered excessive. Pregnancy is another red line that we draw. There is no safe dose of pregnancy and drinking. And then for legal purposes, under 21, that if you're under 21, it's actually considered excessive drinking if you are actually drinking. So let's get to the good. What is moderate drinking, right? So for women, it is basically 1 or less a day, or if you're going to binge, it has to be less than 3, so 1 or 2. For men, it's less than 2 a day, and or 1, 2, or 3 in a single day. Again, in totality, you still have to be less than 14 for men, less than 7. So that's a lot of numbers that are out there, but I'm putting it out there in terms of reference because a lot of us, like I said, have exceeded that at many times. And it depends what stage we are at in our lives. And so they actually have different guidelines for if you're older than 65, it's even much less at that point.
Yeah. I guess at this point, glad I'm a guy. I can consume just a little bit more, but
you're too in shape though.
Well, it's a few different things. Maybe it's stress that keeps the weight off, but there's a lot of other things that go into it. I kind of want to dive in a little bit about, kind of like the problems that we're talking about. Like right now we've sort of, anything else that we need to do to like set the definition or the boundary of like what is drinking or what thing that we need to worry about before we start diving into the we'll call it the bad.
We're kind of dipping our toe into it. So I sent you some charts, and I'm not going to even really break them down. But the majority of the people that are drinking are actually it's only a certain part of the population. So we tend to generalize the population as a whole. Like we think, it's Super Bowl. Everybody's drinking on Super Bowl.
Yeah, my 80-year-old grandma plus the 22-year-old getting hard seltzers. Yeah,
hard seltzers is a whole new game changer, and I can talk about that with nutrition. But it's really only half of the U.S. population is accounting for the majority of the drinking. And then a lot of people who are excess drinkers aren't necessarily. A lot of people who are binge drinkers aren't necessarily drinking heavily as well. The majority of them aren't. So if you break it down that piece of pie even smaller, the majority of the heavy binge drinkers is even a smaller percentage of the population. So that's why there's actually hope, because if you can reach out to some of these people and, talk to them, adjust their lifestyles, it could make actually a huge difference, because we tend to look at the United States as a model. If everybody's doing this, as we just talked about, everybody's drinking during Super Bowl, well, it's actually not true. So we don't need to target everybody. We just need to target a certain percentage of the population and try to get that message through.
Makes sense. All right. Well, let's go ahead. Let's dive in with the part that everybody's going to probably go like, I don't want to hear this, but unfortunately, you're probably going to have to hear it. So let's talk about some of the short-term and long-term, effects as it relates to obviously cancer and other kind of habits that might be a part of this too.
Yeah, and it's I alluded to this a little bit earlier, and I grew up in an era where I hate to say it, food was kind of bland. I remember the TV dinners, and it was just like, it was okay, but it was such a treat. It's like you're on your TV cart and you're watching TV and eating these Hungry Man dinners. Like, it was the greatest thing. But now I'm like, I can get like gochujang, like pickles on my, kangaroo burger with, a pretzel bun that's been toasted with, Irish butter. Like, that wasn't accessible 40 years ago. So everything's becoming much more and more tasty. And so I liken the alcohol industry similar to the food industry in the sense that their job is to sell it to us. And the best way to sell it to us is to make it taste really darn good. There's a book that's out there, but they talk about, for food, it's called The Bliss Point. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the Bliss Point.
I have not.
It's pretty interesting, but it is how the industry has basically found this bliss point for us to eat. Like, what is the perfect intersection of salty, sweet, and fat? And I don't remember exactly if this was the example that they used, but somebody had brought this up to me. Take a guess what food could represent that perfect interaction of sweet, salt, and fat that hits that bliss addiction point.
Sweet, salt, bacon.
Oh, that's actually great. And if you have a maple cured or maple sweetened, absolutely. So bacon is definitely one of them. Dorito.
Okay. Cool Ranch or regular?
It started with the regular. And I don't
Okay.
think they've looked at the new ones. But yeah, if you look at a Dorito, it's just got the right amount of salt, fat, and the sweetness. But for whiskey, so nobody remembers their first Dorito. Well, actually, I kind of actually do remember.
There you go.
I do.
You got that kind of memory.
But the thing about whiskey and bourbon is that, so I always say that there's two time machines that exist in our life. Number one is when you're a kid and you're in the car. You fall asleep, you wake up at your destination 6 hours later. That's the time machine. Like, what a glorious thing.
Those are good days.
The good days.
Now we're the ones having to drive.
Exactly. But bourbon is another one of those things. I cannot think of a certain time where I've had bourbon at any given moment and my mind hasn't been transformed to another point in time as a point of reference. I don't do that with vodka. I don't do that with, seltzers, but I don't even remember my first seltzer. But bourbon, there is always a significance, whether it is a location or time in memory. And that is one of the most powerful psychological addicting things that I think keeps us going back to that well to a certain extent.
So is that because does that make it habit forming, do you feel?
I think so, because I don't remember bad times with bourbon. I remember bad tequila times.
Okay.
I remember bad vodka times. I've never had a bad bourbon time. And so it's kind of like your studio or your setup here. Like, it's warming. It's nice. It's inviting. Like, it's that old friend. It's my binky. It's my blankie that I remember. And so as humans, we tend to chase that, right? We're chasing that rabbit. And so that's why with every sip that we have, with every glass that we have, it can be habit forming to a certain extent, because it's not simply for the alcoholic properties, but it's for the time machine, the psychological aspect of it.
That makes sense then. So let's say, you've got that get that psychological like pull within there, and you don't know how to stop yourself. But let's kind of talk a little about some of the effects that it can have. Obviously, you've written a few things in here for cancer and high blood pressure, but what are the things that people need to be really conscious of?
So let's go with the stats. And there's a saying about stats, I forget this. Actually, I don't know the saying, but it's like stats, and then there are lies or whatever. Okay. So you can come up with anything that you want. But in general, and these are sobering numbers, no pun intended, 178,000 Americans will die every year from alcohol, either directly or indirectly. So that translates into 488 a day or 20 an hour. It's actually shortened our lifespans by an average of 24 years, those who have died. And that equivalents into 4 million life years, so that's quite significant. The majority of them are chronic conditions. And so that's the good news. It's reversible to a certain extent. There are certain medical conditions that are not reversible, and we can touch upon some of them, but it is reversible to a certain extent. But unfortunately, the other third are acute. So that it happens in the setting of a motor vehicle accident or a suicide. The key behind all these deaths, it's preventable. And so with the right education and the right mindset. So I have a saying that denial is not just a river in Egypt, right? And so we all go through we go through denial to a certain extent, but a lot of these are reversible. And so even with the cancers, there's probably, the last time it was looked at, 2022, there was about 550,000 cancers related to alcohol. Majority of them are in women, or I should say 378,000 of them were in women. And a lot of that is due to the estrogenic effect of not just alcohol, but obesity. So once you get the two together, it becomes synergenic because you produce more estrogen. And so breast cancer is going to be the biggest risk factor from drinking too much. For most of the new cancers, 86% of them are diagnosed in people over 50 years old. So that shows you that cumulative lifetime effect that we were talking about before. And then there's the societal cost. The number they state is about $248 billion. A lot of it is due to lost labor, lower worker performance, workplace stuff. But there are other things, healthcare costs, there's judicial costs, property damages, and things like that. So these are the costs on society. And I apologize to the listeners.
No. That's real numbers. It's real things that we have to understand, and this is real life.
Yeah,
right. That's part of it. I mean, it's a byproduct of it all. And you touched on other things. There's other things of getting into the social and wellness problems, relationship problems, all those kind of things that become factors as well. One of the things that actually I'm looking at here, it's kind of very interesting, is the physiology of alcohol, and really like how it works and what it does to actually like impact you and when it hits you. Kind of explain that a little bit, because it's very fascinating. These are fun numbers.
It is certainly interesting, and a lot of it factors into the short-term impacts. So these short-term injuries, the physiology of alcohol, our liver can only really process so much alcohol at any given time. And so I can touch a little bit more about that, but going back to the stats, this is what causes a lot of the motor vehicle accidents, the falls, and the drownings. And so studies have shown even driving after one drink, so let's say a standard drink 0.02%, you are actually already impaired at that point. Legally, you're under the limit, but you're actually impaired. And so roughly 31% of all traffic-related fatalities do involve alcohol-impaired driving. And that's not just driving. There's boating, there's snowmobiles, which I've mentioned before, and then there's violence that's associated with it. But for going back to the physiology, our body has to produce this. And with the physiology, there's a good rule of thumb, because if each drink is 0.02, your body processes about 0.015 per hour. So the one drink per hour is actually pretty good. It first hits your brain within 5 minutes, believe it or not.
I can believe it. Usually my mood turns around. We started drinking this bottle you brought, which is the Lickfield Distillery. I'm already having a great time. So.
Yeah. Well, I've been drinking since yesterday, so I think I got a nice little level going here. But it does hit you within 5 minutes. Probably peaks within 30 to 90 minutes. A lot of the absorption is very different, and so they actually say, we always talk about hangovers and how to deal with it afterwards. Like go eat, at the Waffle House. You should actually be eating at the Waffle House before you drink, because that's going to slow your absorption. But over time, there's actually nothing that's going to change. You've seen all these like miracle cures, how to get alcohol out of your body. You got to drink coffee. You got to take cold showers. You got to go exercise. Nothing is metabolizing your body, your liver is just going to do it naturally. Nothing can speed that up. And so that's part of the problem with physiology. And I was just reading something that actually said, so there are half-lives to alcohol. So that is the half-life it takes for half of it to disappear and half of that to disappear. And over time, it actually still takes about 24 hours to get rid of all the alcohol in your body to a certain extent. So a lot of that is still sticking with you. And so the physiology is your liver can only process so much. Now, there are some dangerous things, like there are some medications. A lot of your medications are metabolized by your liver. And so a good example is Tylenol, right? They wake up with the hangover, or I'm going to pregame, I'm going to take all this Tylenol with my alcohol. I will tell your listeners, do not do that, because once you get alcohol to a certain level, they are processed via the same enzymes and the mechanism as Tylenol. And so all of a sudden you have a logjam and they're fighting for each other. And your liver's it could go into failure actually as a result of that.
Wow.
So
haven't done that, but obviously the Tylenol or Advil the day after, yes, that's a crutch.
Yes.
Been there. It's funny you mentioned going to Waffle House before. People won't make good decisions before they've had alcohol. I don't know any people who are like yeah, we should go and just take down 30 White Castles before we go out, right? So there's something to be said about that one, but the decision making tree there. But no, that's like I said, that's fascinating to just kind of know some of the numbers and the physiology behind it, because it's how your body consumes it and how it's going to be interacting with everything too.
Well, and I'll talk a little bit more about how your body processes it. So there's a series of enzymes that process it from alcohol into eventually you get rid of it either through urine, or you can actually through your breath or sweat or tears, or if you've had a bad night,
I've seen many a time with people crying after having a few drinks. So,
What you can do is you can tap them on the head and you can say, you're getting rid of the alcohol now.
Yeah, it's working.
It's a good thing. But a lot of these buildups, so acetaldehyde is one of the byproducts of these enzymes breaking it down. And that's actually what's toxic. And we can talk on that a little bit later, but that results in oxidative stress, inflammation, and this is what contributes to a lot of these diseases. I'm bringing this up because in East Asians, have you ever seen the Asian flush? I don't know how many Asian friends you have.
Yeah, I mean, they get definitely like very blushy and very red in the cheeks and stuff like that, yes.
And that's after just a sip or a drink. They cannot process alcohol, one of the steps. And so,
which is crazy because there's a ton of alcohol that's drank in Asian countries.
Oh, absolutely. I have friends that they'll power through. They will just power through that. And,
it doesn't affect every Asian, or is it just something that is it just like a genetic thing?
It is a genetic thing, probably about only 30% of Asians. And so whatever my brothers and sisters are lacking, I seem to have gained. So I've stolen all of it from them.
Oh, there you go.
So I think I'm doing okay. But it's not just Asians. There's some Africans, believe it or not, ethnic African, Finns, people from Finland. There's actually a small subset as well. But they cannot process that acetaldehyde, and that's part of the dangerous toxic byproducts that actually contributes to all these. We talked a little bit about the short term, but the long-term side effects and the cancers and things like that.
We'll talk about some of those long-term things, because obviously I think this is probably what is going to be the come to Jesus moment probably for everybody as they start listening to this too.
So when we get to the good, we're going to try to talk about the good, but I'm going to talk about the bad in the context that we have to always weigh the good and the bad. I saw this during COVID. We tended to be very binary about our health decisions. And so we would say either COVID doesn't exist, right? That's what it eventually became, or I'm never going to leave the house. I am the Seinfeld bubble boy. I don't know if you ever watched that. Yes. And I'm going to throw angry, game pieces at whoever comes in my room. And so that's how we became. But the reality is it's kind of like driving. And I've always used this analogy. When you drive, the seatbelt's not going to prevent your accident. But if you have your seatbelt on, it's going to prevent a catastrophic accident. And so that's how we talk about things. If you just take certain measures when you go out there into society, maybe if you're sick, try not to get other people sick, or wear a mask. I know that it's so not in vogue to do things like that. Or, get your vaccines, or simple things like that middle ground. But total deniability, being binary about it, is no way to live because we're just getting other people sick. But on the other hand, living in your bubble is also no way to live as well. And so there is a middle ground. So with long-term use, the big thing, there's some good things about alcohol, but the majority of them are unfortunately bad, and a lot of it leads to cancer. That's where the story comes back to. And it's really weighing the pros and the cons of those good benefits of alcohol really with the cancer and all the other bad things that, I can certainly briefly mention. But cancer seems to be the big specter because there are a lot of cancers that are associated.
You'd mentioned almost 500,000 cancers that are related to alcohol. So
no,
golly, I hope I'm not one of the 500,000. I'll be able to say, but keep going.
Well, they always say if we live long enough, we're going to develop some sort of cancer. So
it's probably not from alcohol. It's probably from all the, Red 40 and corn syrup and, the Wi-Fi waves going through our brains everywhere we go. So who knows?
It's that 5G for sure.
Yeah, it's all in the cell phone.
Actually, the big thing, I don't really have anything to back this up, but your big worry, microplastics. That's the big thing. I mean, I nuked everything in a plastic container growing up, and I'm like, they found microplastics in every body of water, every part of the human body. It's in your semen, and it's everywhere.
Wow.
It is everywhere. But so besides cancer, some of the other things: heart disease, high blood pressure, liver disease, strokes, digestive problems, and then the psychosocial, which we've talked about. I should say I didn't even preface all this. I'm not an alcohol expert, and so there's a lot of other people out there that can talk better about these things. But in general, these are...
You're the most expert we've had on the show. So by that means you are the expert.
All right, great. I'll just set up shop in the corner over there and answer questions. But so going back to the physiology, we talked about the toxic byproducts. So with this acetaldehyde and all these other toxic byproducts, it ends up, you get this inflammatory state that you're constantly in, and that ends up damaging your DNA, and it's subjecting your cells in your bodies to oxidative stress, and to a certain extent, it's going to suppress your immune system. But getting on to your cancer question, yes, it's been attributed to a lot of cancers, and so they've actually deemed it that it is it's the third leading preventable cause of cancer, meaning that we can modify our alcohol intake. And some of those cancers, it basically start at your mouth and go all the way to your butt, right? It's going to affect everything on the way. So we're talking mouth cancer, we're talking throat cancer, we're talking voice box cancer, we're talking esophageal cancer, colon, gastric, liver. And so these are the major ones, but there are the side ones that have nothing to do with your digestive system. And so breast, we talked about earlier. So alcohol, obesity, estrogens, all tends to go together. Pancreatic, you've maybe heard about people getting what we call acute pancreatitis from drinking too much alcohol. And so that's an inflammation of your pancreas. Over time, that can develop into chronic pancreatitis, which is just unfortunately very terrible.
And that's where it explodes and can really damage you, right?
It really could. It's a chronic inflammation. You're kind of in and out of the hospital. You just always have abdominal pain. You start losing the ability to actually digest food because a lot of your enzymes there. It can produce cancers, cysts, things like that. So pancreatic cancer is one of them, and even prostate cancer over time as well. So there are a lot of cancers that have been associated with this.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's the real thing we actually have to know about, unfortunately. But it doesn't end there, does it?
No. Well, there's the other thing. So we talked about the acute stuff. So acutely, when you're drinking, we talked about the pancreatitis. You can get hepatitis, liver disease, gout. I don't know if you know what to do with the gout, but the gout.
Yeah, my uncle had gout. Great uncle. Yeah, I think he had to sever off his foot and then at his knee. So yeah, it happened. It
is painful, and I'm telling you, my kangaroo burger and my whiskey for the past 2 days is not going to help my gout chances at this point. But cardiovascular, there's something called the AFib. I don't know, atrial fibrillation. So it's an arrhythmia. So they're actually higher risk for those things. But some of the non-cancer stuff, which is also kind of just as scary, and I apologize to all the listeners out there, like a lot of the liver-related stuff. You've heard of cirrhosis, right? And that's actually where the liver just fails, basically. And over time, cirrhosis probably happens about 30% of those who drink more than 3 drinks a day. And unfortunately, cirrhosis is irreversible. And the liver really does detox your whole body. And once your liver goes, the rest of your body actually tends to follow. And so once you hit cirrhosis, end-stage cirrhosis, it's kind of irreversible. But there's something called steatosis. It's kind of a fatty liver. I don't know if you've heard of that.
I have not.
And that's actually happening with non-alcoholics just because of the amount of calories that we're consuming and the obesity. But that is actually reversible. So these are some of the non-cancers that are actually very dangerous out there as well.
Okay. Are you done scaring us yet?
I am done scaring.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, let's turn this ship around, right?
I'm so sorry. You're not going to air this, are you?
No. We have to. I mean, Yuli, I mean, that's the reality, right? It's something that at the very top of the show you talked about, we've harped on a lot of this bad stuff, but a lot of it is because of you need to know what moderation is and what moderation means to you. It's like you can't be doing this every single day, day in, day out. We might have done that in college. We all partied at one time, but as you get older, your body can regenerate and kind of like help itself. But as you get older, you do have to maintain it. It's like maintaining anything else, whether it's a car or anything like that, right? You've got to make sure the miles keep going.
Absolutely, yes. And so I do need to take, you got to take your body to Jiffy Lube every now and then. And, there is something to be said about dry January. It just depends. If you're going to follow it up with, full on February, then you're kind of
doesn't really do much.
You're negating it. But so let's get to the good. So there are some good things about alcohol. Now, I'm going to say overall, there's probably not an association. So they've looked at people who don't drink at all and then people who do drink, who lives longer. And there's probably overall not a really good compelling evidence for the glass of red wine, the 2 glasses of red wine that you're having. In fact, they're actually recommending if you don't drink at all, don't start drinking just for the health benefits. But there are some health benefits for it. And so one of it is cardiovascular. And so the heart, basically, it is thought to be cardioprotective. So there are studies where they've looked at people that didn't drink at all, people that drank a little bit. And this is going to be the key term for this whole entire podcast, is that moderation. It's the hockey stick. And I think you've talked about the hockey stick in terms of like bourbon growth or something like that.
Sales usually.
Yeah, it's usually sales. So there is that point where there's that sweet point if you are already drinking that where it may be cardioprotective to a certain extent. And what do I mean by cardioprotective?
That's exactly what I was going to ask.
Cardiovascular. So let's go back to the physiology. So they thought antioxidants may be attributed. So red wine is probably the best bang for your buck. So all of you listeners out there, they should probably be drinking, your red wine cask finish. No, I'm kidding. It's probably not going to make a difference.
It still keeps bourbon in business at that point.
Yes, it certainly does. But red wine seems to be the one that's been the most studied. But in the end, it probably doesn't matter exactly what kind of alcohol. But the key is finding that key sweet spot. And it depends what study you look at because none of them are really good. But they thought that maybe your sweet spot, if you're already a drinker, like I said, if you're not drinking, don't start drinking, is maybe a drink every other day if you're a man. If you're a woman, maybe 2 drinks a week to a certain extent where you may develop some sort of cardio protection.
Now, what do you mean by cardio protection? As in like alcohol helps the heart move faster and kind of gives it a workout? Or what do you mean by cardio protection?
Yeah, I think that's actually a great question. So most of the heart, so your heart is a muscle and it's supplied by blood vessels. And it's really just the health of those blood vessels. It's not actually the heart that is protecting. There have been acute alcoholics where their heart has actually just enlarged and inflamed and it can't actually pump anymore. They develop these cardiomyopathies. But it really has to do with the blood vessels themselves. And so alcohol has at that J sweet spot, it has an anti-inflammatory effect and may actually have an antithrombotic effect. And so a heart attack is basically it's a clot and it shuts off that blood vessel, it's clogged, and that part of the muscle dies because there's no more blood going to it. And so when you're antithrombotic, like an aspirin, you're actually taking away the ability to clot. So because
it thins out your blood, right?
To a certain extent, absolutely. And so that's actually where it probably helps. Indirectly, it may actually help with something called HDL, which is your good cholesterol. And so it may raise it a little bit. There are medications that raise it a lot of it, but alcohol may do it actually to a certain extent. And then actually, if you're not a diabetic, it actually may help you to a certain extent with processing insulin as well.
Okay. And that's from the cardio side of things or other things?
Yeah. So everything's actually kind of important. I want to say there's nothing that you can't really live without, but your blood vessels are really your most important. And so, unfortunately, there is a tit for tat. So, in the sense that alcohol can raise your level of hypertension, your blood pressure, which is actually bad for your blood vessels. But I think this anti-inflammatory effect, because your blood perfuses all of your organs, whether it's your brain, so maybe it'll decrease your risk of stroke. Maybe there are actually some good dementia studies where if you're in that sweet spot, again, moderation, where it actually may be protective to a certain point.
Oh,
so
wow.
We're talking the brain, we're talking the heart, we're talking the gut. That's really the main benefit for alcohol, maybe red wine at the most, but maybe all of alcohol in general. But again, you got to hit that sweet spot.
So it's not like performing like an ozone protective layer around it or anything like that,
no,
right? Okay.
No, absolutely. And the caveat, like I always say, is that you have to take this in context. And so the recommendations are, don't start drinking for heart health. Because a lot of the other stuff that we've already talked about that we've already forgotten, the bad stuff, the cancers, they far outweigh probably the benefits for it. But I'm just here to say that there are maybe some good things about insulin, about your blood vessels, anti-thrombosis, anti-inflammatory. That's actually pretty good in that very low, moderate area.
The very low, moderate area. And then some other things that you had written on here, coronary death, risk with diabetes. You kind of mentioned a little bit of that already. Gallstones.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It may actually lower the risk of gallstones, and it really depends how. So you have bile, and you develop these stones, and your biliary tract is part of your liver, and it's attached to your gallbladder. It's plumbing. And so you just don't want that plumbing to get gummed up. And so that's what happens. It may decrease that risk, and you may decrease your risk of what we call gallbladder inflammation, cholecystitis. It passes through your pancreas, so that pancreatitis, you can get a gallstone pancreatitis. So it may reduce it to a certain extent because of the way that you process bile. I should say
at that point, mine's like a slip and slide at this point. So we should be good there.
Yeah, a slip and slide is actually good, but a lot of people have had to have their gallbladders removed, to reduce this risk as well. The cholecystectomy is what we say. So gallstones, it may decrease. We talked about insulin sensitivity. There may actually be something about dementia to a certain extent.
Now, why dementia? Of all things?
Oh, I don't know. So I tried to look into this, and there are much smarter people out there that probably know more about this. They've looked at the studies, and they seem that it's mostly in
which is kind of odd because usually you forget everything with too much alcohol. So it's like, but this could keep your long-term memory. So I'm just kind of curious.
Again, in moderation, so that J curve, there may be a protective effect. It's been mostly noticed in women. Now, I will be perfectly honest with you. There are acute psychiatric and dementia-related diseases related to alcohol, where some of them are actually life-threatening. And if you come out of it alive, then you have these long-term effects. So in general, alcohol for the brain is probably not that good. But there have been some very poorly done studies that are out there that look at this and say maybe there's a slight decrease in dementia risk at these low levels.
Yeah. And then I guess when you talk about studies and stuff like that, because a lot of us, we all read the headlines and things that come out, and whether it's a glass of wine is good for you today, a glass of wine is bad for you. No, 2 glasses is really great. Like, how do you? And they're all trying to come from respectable either backgrounds or studies, or whether it's from University of Denmark or like whatever it is. Like, as a consumer, am I looking at that going like, how much can I trust a lot of these studies that are coming out? And especially you as a doctor, how do you look at it and say, I can verify this, or I can say like, I can use this as concrete data?
Yeah, it's really difficult to say that there isn't really any good concrete data that says that it's good to a certain extent.
It's kind of easy to get in some of like these medical journals, right?
Yes.
Okay. I guess I remember reading something at some point. It's like, yeah, you published something. And it's like, they just want headlines.
Yeah. And that to a certain extent, a lot of these journals actually, you have to pay to get into them nowadays. But the reality is, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. And because I certainly don't want to harm the industry to a certain extent, but the reality is with the benefits, if you look at it in its totality, a binary 0 versus 1, if you could decide, do we drink or do we not drink? For your health, it's probably just better not to in general. But nothing's like that. It's not binary. It's not 0 or 1s. And there's that whole gray area. So we have to find that point on the J curve that's actually important. And so back to your question about the studies, you can find a study that will basically support anything for you. But the majority...
Just find something that agrees with your viewpoint. Okay.
Exactly. I'll go make a study right now that agrees with Kenny. So, but the reality is that the majority of the studies are probably negative to a certain extent. And so we are looking at positive reasons to do it because, again, it's not binary. We have to find that middle ground. It's just probably closer to that 0 than the 1, I guess is what I'm saying.
You put a lot of stuff in here on the physiological side of things and really what it means to your health. But I want to kind of just get your personal opinion on the psychological, right? Your mental health and the way that people are, they let loose or they become more you or they just enjoy it, versus having to say no, you've got to go cold turkey, you got to stop. Kind of talk about what the psychology behind it might be.
I think, and that's probably the most important part. And unfortunately, we would probably have to do another podcast on it and maybe get a different expert. The way I look at alcohol in terms of its benefits on the body, I break it out into the physiologic and then psychological. So physiologic, there's the pros and cons, which we just talked about. The psychological, we're not going to touch on the cons because that is a whole different topic. Addiction,
totally.
Medicine, seizure, I didn't mean to say seizures, suicides, the societal impact of alcohol is quite significant. But the benefits, I talked about the time machine, right? There's something that I read that was actually quite striking to me, that it was actually alcohol's the reason we turned from hunters to gatherers. Because we started, instead of venturing out into the world, we're like, oh, I'm going to have a couple glasses of whiskey with Kenny. I'm not going to go hunt down my buffalo today. And then what's around? Oh, there's a bush with some blueberries on there. That's what we'll have for dinner tonight.
Yeah.
And so they've actually thought that it's because of alcohol. That's why over time we've become that macro time machine that we talked about before, why we've gone from hunters to actually gatherers. And so that psychological impact is actually quite significant and quite profound from a well-being standpoint. The key is the line that you cross over can be very quick. It can be very sudden, all of a sudden, where it becomes that crutch, where it becomes that addiction. And so these firewalls we need to set up again, but we can't do it in micro real time because nobody's going to wake up tomorrow. I'm not going to be tomorrow and be like, oh my God, I really hit it this weekend in Louisville. I need to change. It's more like over time, I'm just going to need to recognize these things. And so that's part of the problem with the psychological aspect because there's so many good benefits, but all of that all of a sudden leads to bad benefit, that's an oxymoron, bad things that can certainly happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, it goes back into the top of the show, everything in moderation, trying to figure out exactly where do you fit in regards to the spectrum of how much can you consume, where is your happy medium, and
right.
Make sure you don't cross over that line. Because, I mean, we see it here all the time, even, here in our own bar, it's alcohol becomes a social lubricant. It becomes something that people can congregate around. It can be something that becomes a common denominator, and that's why bourbon, why a lot of us love it, is because it is the thing that brings us together, that a lot of us are like, hey, we share this in common, let's talk about it. And it becomes impactful from a psychological thing.
Yes.
But the physiological be damned. That's just one of those things. It's I also look at it as it is a good factor in regards to that too.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you're going to have indelible moments like this moment. I'm drinking Litchfield with Kenny. That I'm going to probably take that to my grave. Because I'm going to remember that. But in a positive way, it's going to be a positive well-being from that certain standpoint. I mean, the reality with a lot of these things is that moderation has become a cliche, right? We talk about it in a cliche, and nobody really wants to hear that word because it's been said so much, not just with alcohol, but
which
everything.
One, moderate or cliche?
Both. That is true. The moderate cliche has been talked about too much. But that is the key, and that's probably going to be the take-home point from my standpoint, that you just get help when you think that you need help, or stop when you think that you're being excessive. If this is impacting your life, either physically, either psychologically, certainly seek help. There are resources that are out there. And I'm going to make actually the plea for the industry. We talked earlier about the lives that are actually lost. And so if you look at the alcohol industry in general, I'm going to be very morbid here for 2 seconds, if that's okay.
Okay, as long as you follow up with something good.
I don't know. Well, I will follow up with something good.
All right.
So, do you want to drink out of a tube in your stomach? Is that how you want to eat because you developed esophageal cancer, right? Or you can't drink at all because you had that stroke at age 50, 55, 60, whatever it may be? Or do you want to moderate and be able to do that till you're 90, till you're 95, right? You hear about the Italian grandmother. It's like, I still have my Chianti until like I'm 105 years old.
Yeah.
And from the industry perspective alone, right? You don't want to lose your customers early. You certainly want them to be able to proliferate over time. And so I would actually advocate, if I was king for a day and I can make everybody do this, that it would actually be great for everybody, not physiologically, not just psychologically, but also the alcohol industry. If we actually subjected ourselves to moderation, that you would actually have longer living customers, healthier customers, and so on. All of these deaths this horrible stuff that I just talked about, it wouldn't all go away, but it would certainly decrease to a certain extent. So there is a longevity that is associated with it. And that's why I brought up the oak episode, right? There's a longevity that we need to renew. It's not just with that, but with our bodies as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because a lot of big corporations, like it's all sales based, right? It's a capitalist, that kind of economy where if people aren't drinking, then people aren't making money, and it's like Correct. You have to keep doing that. And it's hard to kind of to not keep things morbid. As part of our brand, we go and we travel, we go and talk to liquor stores all the time, and typically when we go and pitch our stuff at liquor stores, it's between a Tuesday and Thursday, sometime between like 10 and 3 p.m. And who do you think's coming in and buying between 10 and 3 p.m., right? It's people that are coming in and they're buying their pints of vodka. They're buying their small things that they're just looking to just get their quick buzz, either to get them through the day or just to I don't know. I don't want to assume things, but obviously it's not for the weekend warriors out there.
And you're absolutely right. How can we help that cohort, that population, right? The store owner's generally not going to be like, "Hey, I've seen you here every day for, have you thought about
this?"
Right.
It's like, no, they want to make money. They're gonna sell, $3 at a time every time they can.
Absolutely. And so the support needs to come from home. And a lot of times it's just not going to come from home as well, right? The family member is like, oh, thank goodness, Dr. Wu is drinking, he's out of my face or something like that. But no, I joke about that. But in reality, we need to increase access for people to have, I don't want to say education, because that is also a cliche that people's eyes rolls is like, educate. We need to provide more education. I'm not even sure what that means anymore, but just access to information and the availability of resources, and just that ability to look in the mirror, right? That gut check, no pun intended, that I think is going to help people. But who's going to be the person that's going to be carrying that flag? I don't know.
All right. Well, Dr. Wu, Yuli, thank you so much for being a part of this, providing a ton of information, more than I was even comprehending, ready to get out of this. And I'm glad we shared a drink together. This was fun. It might be my only one for the day now if I just sit there in moderation. But, we're also starting at, 10 a.m. here, so we might be able to have another one a little bit later this afternoon too. So
I hope you do. It is a Friday.
It is a Friday after all. So, Yuli, tell people more about either how they can find you online, follow you, ask questions, anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they can certainly find me in my organization, but, from a whiskey standpoint, there's a couple.
If they want to buy your age, Hirsch off you.
That's right. Exactly. On Instagram, we have a couple things. Wag to Die is actually, that's We're All Gonna Die. That's what it's short for. Whiskey Doc MD and Food is Medicine MD, because one of the things we didn't talk much about, but the relationship with food and alcohol as well, because it really is synergistic. It's not just the alcohol, but it's the alcohol plus the food plus the smoking, right? Those three together are, unfortunately, it's synergistic to a certain extent. So Food as Medicine, Food is Medicine MD. You can reach me at Gmail or on Instagram, and I'm happy to try to answer any questions.
Awesome. Well, Yuli, thank you again for coming on the show. It was fascinating. It was a good dose of reality, but super educational. And I think this is probably one of the fun things that we get to do as a part of Bourbon Pursuit, is bring on guests that we typically had never explored this portion of it. And, we had talked about some other people that have done, champion dry January and stuff like that. And I'm glad you kind of counteracted that and saying like, it doesn't really do you anything if you're going to go ham in February, right? It's like keep dry January to yourself, but there's just a point of moderation. And I think that's what it all kind of boils down to. But thank you again for providing all of this data, this factual education. And I will make sure that this particular information on the presentation he gave me is available on our website. So if you want to go ahead and you want to download this, plus you can also see right there his Instagram and Gmail and everything like that, be able to get in contact with him too. And be like, hey, no, I've drink a pint of bourbon and ate a pound of bacon every day, and I'm going to be the next case study. Maybe you can be that person.
There's always certainly those cases.
There's always the outliers.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
So again, thank you for coming on. Make sure you follow him. You can follow Bourbon Pursuit on all the socials. If you do like what you hear, you can subscribe to it so you never miss an episode. You can do it at bourbonpursuit.com. And if you do love the show, you can also support us on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And even better, you're like, hey, we had a great guest on. You should probably listen to this. You can go ahead, share it with a friend, put out a review, whatever it is. We love just to help spread the good word of everything we're doing too. But with that, cheers, everybody. We'll see you next time.